Presidents all over the world are typically elected into office as they are the representatives of those who voted them in, but there are some presidents that use their power so destructively that it shatters the trust of their people. Like former President Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. They both seem to have one thing in common: they were on a list of names of people who visited a certain island. As of today, in regards to the release of Epstein's list, an anticipated case that was meant to be released to the public only exposes a portion of the listed names that included various figures like Prince Andrew, Stephen Hawking, George Lucas, and Kevin Spacey, and so much more, who, as I mentioned, include former presidents Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. Those over 180 names have been listed on those who visited the island, where so many powerful, rich, and authoritative figures, like the former presidents, were able to maintain their identity under wraps, all behind the public eye. However, the inclusion of the name on the list does not indicate there were any allegations against the individual. But according to the records in regards to the listed accusers like Bill Clinton, underage witnesses who experienced personal violation testified that Clinton likes them young. Ew. And just like former President Bill Clinton, former President Donald Trump was mentioned and photographed many times with Epstein, and other victims have noted seeing Trump and had reoccurrence of a time from a flight from Palm Beach, Florida in 2001. When the plane was unable to land in New York due to a storm, they had to land in Atlantic City and went to one of Trump's casinos. Since one of the witnesses, who was also brought to the trip, was underage at the time, she asked if she was permitted to get into the casino, and she asked the other witness, "I did not know anything about how old you had to be to gamble legally. I just knew she could not get in because of an ID issue, so she and I did not gamble." But as always, they were always constantly in the presence of adult men. Speaking of another US presidential leader that has done gross things, although he was a member of the Republican Party and at his time was one of the most popular sitting US presidents, after his death a number of scandals were exposed, including the Teapot Dome, a scandal that involved private oil companies at low rates without competitive bidding, as well as an extramarital affair with Nan Britton, which tarnished his reputation. But the thing is, that affair was just the baseline. The highlight of that fact is that she was a woman who was 30 years younger than him and gave birth to his illegitimate child in a closet at the White House. There were even rumors that his wife, a fit of jealousy, may have been the one that ended his life. And although the United States has had a lot of presidents to have skeletons in their closet, other presidents, like the Indonesian president Suharto, is noted as a military dictator whose pro-American rhetoric had led to a lot of anti-Chinese sentiments and a genocide to Chinese Indonesians in 1998, as well as, more importantly, his tyrannical and brutal reign on the nation as the second and longest reigning president of 32 years. Although the nation of Indonesia is aware, some people around the world may not know that he conscripted his country under his new order administration, as Suharto had turned the Indonesian government from military dictatorship to a personalistic, authoritarian regime. According to the Transparency International, he was noted as one of the most corrupted leaders in modern history, having embezzled as an alleged $15 to $35 billion USD during his rule. As a result of many levels, including his reign, is why Indonesia suffers an economic recession every 4 years. Although the brutalization of World War II caused by the Japanese imperial forces had affected so many Southeast Asian and East Asian countries, Indonesia had experienced an occupation in comparison to the Dutch in a shocking way. With his connections with Kissinger and General Ford, the fear of communism spread as Vietnam was dealing with the war on all sides. So Suharto had Indonesia invade East Timor, killing up to 100,000 lives, the onslaught that the war criminals like Kissinger supported. Speaking of dictatorship presidents that embezzled a lot of money and killed a lot of civilians if you question their authority, the former dictator Marcos Sr., who like Suharto, reigned the Philippines as a military dictator and ran for president for over 14 years, up until he was finally exiled by the People Power Revolution that stemmed from the slums to the highest economic status of the Filipino people, who were extremely exhausted of his tyrannical reign. A reign that also estimated to figure about $5 billion to $10 billion of USD wealth acquired over the last year of the recent Marcos administration, but also rough extreme estimates of wealth acquired since the 1950s going as high as $30 billion. Many Filipinos had died under the 14-year reign, and it wasn't until the assassination of Aquino did the people rise up and kick Marcos and his family out. But as always, the United States, who always gets involved in other people's business, allowed the Marcos family to escape to Hawaii. And since we're talking about the Philippines, might as well mention the other president. As we know, Duterte, as his reign as a presidential ruler, where he utilized authoritative grip with his campaign on war on illegal substance. Because of his administration and brutal tactics, the attack on the slums and poor regions of the Philippines were laid in constant violent accusations, many of which were left being executed before even being ever brought to trial. Well, in some way, it was also in a form to reduce the amount of population of lower economic status groups and basically gentrify neighborhoods that were just poor. And as a result of the new president Bongbong, who is the son of the military tyrannical dictator Marcos, his vice president is also Duterte's daughter, Sarah, who last year spent over $20 million USD of Filipino people's hard-earned money of a don't ask, don't tell funding. And whenever confronted during congressional hearings and meetings, a lot of these administrative politicians would just walk away. But hey, what do you think they use the money for? Of course, like most dictatorship leaders who use money as a way to sort of flaunt, the president of Venezuela is definitely one of more of the modern presidents who failed their people. I said what I said. According to the estimations of the United Nations and Human Rights Watch, under Maduro's administration, killing more than 20,000 people have been subjected to extrajudicial killings, and even 7 million Venezuelans have been forced to flee the country. Nicolas Maduro Moros and 14 other current and former Venezuelan officials have been charged with narco-terror, corruption, and illegal substance trafficking and other criminal charges. Considering their violation on the Venezuelan people by the use of military rule and corruption led to so many protests and revolts within the country. Even to ease the lack of food and starvation that was occurring in the nation in 2017, Maduro had the audacity to eat an empanada on camera to show that the people, hey look, there's food in the country. Although the presidential elections are supposed to be held soon, the elections keep getting pushed back and to later dates. As of August 2023, there were many investigations of death threats to presidential candidates who are competing against Maduro. Considering he is reigning since 2013, the people of Venezuela still has a chance to make change in 2024 in the upcoming elections. When it comes to presidents who are in power for too long, Paul Kagame is one of them. As Paul Kagame became the president of Rwanda in the year 2000, he rose to power with his guerrilla movement that ended the 1994 Rwandan genocide. And although it notes that he had led Rwanda towards the path of economic prosperity, his government has been described by the UN and several international leaders as a model of good governance in Africa. But his regime has been marked as accusations of human rights violations, and harm of his constant reign had led to oppression of his political opponents and the press. Which we know, if a guy got to run for office for that long, he hasn't left, and that means that the people didn't like him for that long. He just really liked his job, maybe a little too long. But hey, if you're a president of Tanzania and your name is Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, then you probably noted here as a president with dark secrets of violence against your people. In 2012, an absentation, he was sentenced to a life imprisonment for his role in the killings of protesters in 2011 revolution that led to his exit from power. He was also charged with embezzlement, misuse in public funding, suppressing political opponents are some of the sins of the African's longest serving dictators. Although Tanzania did witness stability and some economic prosperity under Ben Ali, there was also the latter. And finally, in regards to Vietnam, aside the war with the US in the 1960s, there was a lot of infighting and civil war that broke out from the north and the south of Vietnam. Because of the infighting of the South Vietnamese of the Catholic versus Buddhist crisis, where at the time 70 to 90% of the population were Buddhist, the president was pro-Catholic and his policies antagonized many Buddhists. Diem, who was the president of the South Vietnam at the time, was heading in the direction of the government to be biased towards Catholics in public service, military promotions, as well as the allocation of the land, business favors, and even tax concessions. He even told one high-ranking officer who forgot he was a Buddhist that he should put the Catholic officers in better positions. So many officers had converted to Catholicism and abandoned their Buddhist belief only so that they could maintain their jobs, and because of this, during the war between the South and the North, only the Catholic militants were allowed firearms, which didn't help as Catholic priests even ran private armies while also performing forced conversion. Even during the present regime, those who were Buddhists were left to starve as only Catholics were given aid, and so they were forced to convert just to eat. Because of the ongoing tensions and war between the people in the land, it only resulted to Diem's assassination, and the generals who were under the Catholic dictatorships did the conflict between the two subside. Anyways, that's all for today, but of course there's more to come. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see your face. Yeah, your face in the next one. My name is Jess, and I'll wish you all the best. Bye.